It's new lens day. Last week, Sony announced a pretty exciting new lens, the 50mm f1.2 G Master. I haven't used it, but I'm sure it's wonderful. From what I've seen, it is super sharp and quiet and also pretty pricey. Today, Sony has given us something similar, but different, and also much more affordable. In fact, I have 3 new Sony lenses to show you today, and one of them is another 50mm. These little beauties are the 24mm f2.8, 40mm f2.5, and 50mm f2.5 G lenses. They are incredibly compact, well-built, silent, and as they are G lenses, they maintain a high level of optical quality. Before we get into it, if you are new here, hello, my name is Leigh, and I share videos every week on photography and anything where you might have a camera in your hand. Subscribe if that sounds interesting to you. I am also very excited to announce that my latest course, all about landscape photography, is now complete. It is over 3 hours of video learning. My courses are one of the benefits available to my members, so there is a link in the description of this video to learn more about channel membership. About these lenses. If you aren't familiar with Sony's lens designations, the top level is G Master and their co-branded Zeiss lenses. And then we have G lenses, still very high quality, but not quite at the level of the G Master lenses. And then everything else, which are still very good. These 3 are G lenses, and that's the middle category, where Sony is looking to balance quality with size and cost. Looking at the lenses, they are dust and moisture resistant, they're metal, they have an aperture ring, which you have the option of having click into each aperture setting or turn smoothly. They have an autofocus, manual focus switch, and a focus ring, as well as a function button, which I will touch on again later in this video. For my testing, I took each of these 3 little lenses on separate outings to see how they performed. I used them on my Alpha 7R4 here, which is a good challenge for these lenses due to the high pixel count. I was able to zoom in and really nitpick the image quality. But as you'll see, they did as expected. Very, very good, but not absolute top-notch performance that we would see with a G Master Prime lens. I mean, of course they did. Sony isn't in the business of putting out substandard lenses, but I will get more into what I mean by that as we talk through my images and video. So let's take a look. I took the 50mm f2.5 lens out for a sunrise. First, the time lapse. I put the lens in an especially challenging situation, directly facing the rising sun. It did very well, but there was some flare. And then things got pretty wild for a moment. If we pause here, you can see that there are some angles where flare is pretty extreme. However, unless you plan to point the lens directly at a light source and have no option to adjust your position or camera angle, this probably isn't an issue for you. If you plan to use these lenses for video, when using autofocus, they are silent as well as very quick. And when using manual focus, the focus ring has a linear response, but you can also see that there is some focus breathing. So the potential for flare when pointing your camera at the sun or focus breathing during video are trade-offs for a lens at this price point and in this compact form factor. Whether or not those drawbacks are important to you are something else, and we will discuss that at the end of this video. The next morning, I took the 24mm f2.8 out for a hike in the woods. This is where the compact nature of the lenses really shine. I was hiking, it was cold, and it was simply enjoyable to have the lighter, more compact camera setup. And as you can see, I did bring a tripod on this hike, which was, fun fact, actually heavier than the camera and lens combined, but I was able to capture some stable video. One thing that was noted when Sony briefed me on these lenses is that the edges do have a small amount of fall off in terms of sharpness. And I really had to look for it because as you can see here, it's very slight. Like the potential for flare, these lenses having slightly less sharp corners is a trade-off that you make for the price and size and weight. If the ultimate in sharpness across the frame is important to you, moving up to the Sony G Master lenses or the Sigma Art lenses for E-mount is the way to go. In fact, let's do a quick comparison. This is my Sony 24mm f1.4 G Master, and this is the new 24mm f2.5 G lens. The G Master opens up to a wider aperture, but you can see that it's also larger, it's heavier, and it's more than twice the price. But it is sharp across the frame, if that is important to you. And then the 40mm f2.5 had museum duty. I took it around a local museum for stills, and I did a bit of video outside. The f2.5 aperture came in handy in the lower light areas, and when I wanted to isolate a portion of some of the art and artifacts with a shallow depth of field. One thing to note here is that the quality of the out of focus areas is very nice on all three of these lenses, as well as the transition from in focus to out of focus areas is very gradual, which is certainly more aesthetically pleasing than a harsh transition. Also, while these are full frame lenses, they would work well on APS-C bodies too. I set the lenses function button to change from full frame to cropped mode on my camera so that I could easily switch back and forth as I walked around. On this 40mm lens, when I switched over to cropped mode, my effective field of view became 60mm. And incidentally, with the 24mm, your effective field of view would be 36mm, and the 50mm lens would be 75mm. So, benefits to these lenses. They're compact, lightweight, relatively wide apertures. They have good clarity, they're silent, they're quick, they're relatively inexpensive. They have weather sealing. Did I mention they have a really close focusing distance too? As for drawbacks, these lenses do not have the absolute ultimate clarity across the frame. There is some potential for flare, and there's some focus breathing. Whether or not these drawbacks matter is completely personal preference though. For my purposes, focus breathing doesn't matter even a tiny bit. For my purposes, for what I would use these lenses for, the ever so slightly less sharp corners don't matter at all either. And the flare for me is generally something that I could work around, and I would work around, because the benefit of having this small and lightweight lens outweigh that drawback. I do a ton of hiking and running and biking with my cameras, so those inches and ounces that are saved with these lenses make a significant difference. Well, Sony keeps cranking out release after release, camera bodies, lenses. In fact, these three bring the Sony collection to 63 E-mount lenses. They've been building out and improving the E-mount system for many years at this point, so you have a lot to choose from. That means that the contents of your camera bag are suited to you and to your style of shooting. Sony does have other prime lenses that are the same or nearly the same focal lengths that will remain in their lineup. Not to mention the zoom lenses that cover these focal lengths, but they are a solid addition to the Sony lineup. And beyond that, we even have independent lens manufacturers making E-mount lenses, like the very nice Sigma Contemporary I series of prime lenses, which are actually pretty similar to these new Sony lenses. I'm certainly not going to complain about having options. Like I said, it means that we can each find the exact right collection of lenses for us and how we shoot. For me, it means that these lenses would be great for hiking, for travel, for a day at the museum, but honestly, I think that these lenses will fit the bill for most uses. It's only those folks that need edge-to-edge sharpness or the extra wide aperture that would probably take a pass on these. For me, I would use them any day of the week. I mean, take the 24mm for example. The only reason why I would pick up my G Master over this lens, if I had both on my shelf, is astrophotography. I would be happy doing everything else with this smaller, less expensive lens. Speaking of price, each of these lenses are priced the same at $500 in the US or $799 in Canada. The 24 and the 40 will ship May 13th, and the 50 will ship May 27th. I'll link to these guys in the description as soon as pre-order links are available. If you want to learn more about photography from me, I mentioned the landscapes course at the beginning of this video, but I do have a series of complete courses where I go step by step explaining the concepts of each topic in plain language. Those courses are one of the benefits available to my members, so again, there is a link in the description to learn more about channel membership. Thank you to Sony for allowing me to try out these lenses, and thank you for watching.